Contemporary issues in sport. Contemporary issues fill the sporting world, and more importantly football. I will now address some of these issues. There may be violence at any point in all sports. In most of them it is not tolerated. However, during ice hockey, fighting is very common and only suppressed with a 5-minute ban, not really punishing them. When looking at violence in the sport, and mainly focusing on football, we need to look deeper, like looking into the sport's history. When football was first invented, it was a branch off of the rules of rugby, originally being called rugby football or mob football. Played across two neighbouring villages with no rules and countless participants, being funded by the upper class as entertainment for them, with them throwing the ball in the air to commence the riots. With no rules or officials, the teams could do what they want to get the ball in the goal. This involved a heavy amount of violence, which led to malicious injuries and even deaths. Because of this background, there can be many times where this may get out of control, more so than the game of rugby, which is said to be a gentleman's sport, also wearing off on the rules of calling the match official sir. Now, with the sport's past influencing the rules and the manner of the game is played in, Now with the sport's past still influencing the rules and the manner the game is played in, violence and aggression is shown in all manners of ways. Verbal aggression is constantly used against the referees after controversial decisions, or even just close ones that don't go their way. Many people watching football for the first time believe this is very disrespectful and should not be tolerated, however shockingly is. Allowing this to happen and players proceeding to do it then sends a bad image and message to children growing up watching and playing football, making them act in the same immature manner. As well as this, fans then begin to join in, which leads to an abusive crowd. These crowds have then got more of a chance to get out of hand. An example of this can be in 1985, Juventus played Liverpool in the final of the European Cup, where Liverpool fans got into the Juventus area, 49 deaths and 6 injured. This then led to a ban for England teams for 5 years trying to combat against hooliganism. Throughout the sport, when more frustration kicks in between the players, direct aggression has the possibility to be acted upon, but wouldn't be receiving punishment to express the tolerance for these actions. Recently, however, the FA now put their foot down, trying to change the image of the sport from outside perspectives. One example of this is when Luis Suarez bit Branislav Ivanovic in frustration during the 2-2 draw against Chelsea. After seeing this disgusting behaviour, the FA handed Luis a ban from all types of football for 4 months, as well as giving him a £63,000 fine. This is then showing the progress of the sport with no tolerance for barbaric behaviour with the future of the game watching on, and therefore making sure that they are being influenced by the correct behaviour, not seeing players bombard the ref with no respect or horrific violence full of anger. Issue 2. Politics in sport. Politics is everywhere in sport due to countries using the popularity and the enormity of it to get a message out to the world stage, trying to influence people's views and beliefs. Beginning with the Olympics. The Olympics is the most important and incredible event in the world, bringing the entire globe together to watch the talented athletes competing against each other for their countries. As you can imagine, there have been many a times where countries have purposely used the scale of the event to impact the world. The first example of this was in 1936, where the Olympics was held in Germany, Berlin. These Olympics were 3 years before the start of World War II, and therefore Adolf Hitler used this global stage to promote the Nazi Party like a huge propaganda campaign, gaining more Nazi voters and followers, creating his plans for the years to come easier. As well as this, another example of politics in sport would be during the Cold War, where the USA did not agree with Russia invading Afghanistan. As a result of this, they didn't attend the 1980 Olympics in Moscow, effectively ruining the spirit of the whole Games that year. In retaliation to this, the Soviet Union returned the favor by not going to the Los Angeles Olympics in 1984. Whether or not these political disagreements between these two countries should have affected the Olympics during the 80s will always be a conversation to be had. However, politics is everywhere, but should we really accept that this is the case? I believe this to be a very big issue in the sport, as it takes out the spirit of it being a celebration of humanity, not a way to advertise parties or political views. Actions like boycotting the Olympics isn't fair on the sport or athletes. These athletes have trained for years to compete in these Olympics, to not even compete against everyone. This then gives them doubt in their mind if they win, thinking what would have happened if the country was there, which isn't fair for an athlete after just winning Olympic gold. As well as this, the spectators have paid to watch the biggest event in the world, not an Olympics where only some countries compete. When hosting the World Cup, there is always way more political advantages to it than football related. The World Cup can raise the status of any country or city. Although it may be costly, the profits definitely exceed any major expenses, for example, a new stadium. For a worldwide event like the Football World Cup, every seat will be sold out for every game, making an outstanding amount of money without taking into account the TV rights that will be paid for by every major TV channel like the BBC, BT Sports and more. On the topic of the media, home nations may choose to broadcast anything they please. This may be used to send messages to the world, or even make the host country look better than it really seems to be, allowing a better image to come across to increase the country's tourism. For example, when the 2014 World Cup was held in Brazil, in the process of getting the country ready for the global event, they knocked down thousands of slums in the process to build on to mask extreme poverty the country's in. Now, after the World Cup is over, the stadiums are abandoned, rotting away with no funding to run them, whilst on the grounds of many people's makeshift homes. Therefore, as you can see from the political examples, although there are advantages of hosting the World Cup, there are also disadvantages in the corrupt world of politics. Another example of politics in football is the FIFA bid for the Qatar World Cup, although it is completely inappropriate playing conditions for football. However, was bidded by FIFA due to them accepting over £1 million worth of bribes. Knowing their financial situation, Qatar wanted the World Cup to come to them, as it would bring money and tourists to the new hot country.